Jimmy Page is a name synonymous with rock music. Twice inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he stands as one of the most influential guitarists of all time, shaping the sound of a generation. His mastery of the guitar, innovative techniques, and iconic riffs have cemented his place in music history. From the towering solos of Stairway to Heaven to his groundbreaking work with Led Zeppelin, Page's contributions to the world of rock are unmatched. However, behind the legendary persona lies a man whose life is far more complex. Few know of his deep interest in the occult, his turbulent battles with addiction, and the controversies that followed him. What drives the genius behind the music? What shaped his path to greatness? And what secrets lie beneath the surface of one of rock's most enigmatic figures? Jimmy Page was born in the small English town of Heston, where his early life was anything but ordinary. At a young age, his family relocated to the Miles Roadhouse, a place that would unknowingly serve as the starting point for his journey into music. It was here, at just 12 years old, that Page discovered an abandoned Spanish guitar left mysteriously in the house. The instrument, in surprisingly good condition, sparked a deep curiosity within him. No one could explain its origins, but it was destined to become the catalyst for what would eventually make Jimmy Page a household name. That forgotten guitar would open the doors to a lifelong passion. With no formal lessons, Page taught himself to play, drawing inspiration from the music he heard around him. His early influences were diverse, ranging from rock and blues to folk. The sounds of artists like Chuck Berry, Jeff Beck, and Muddy Waters began to shape his style. And soon, Page's growing talent caught the attention of those around him. His natural ability to adapt and experiment with different genres pushed him to explore new techniques and styles, making him a versatile guitarist who could weave magic through any chord or solo. By the time he was in his teens, Page had immersed himself in the world of music. He joined several local bands, testing his skills in various settings. These early musical ventures, although brief, were essential stepping stones in his career. Page spent time with groups like the Black Crowes and the Yardbirds, but it wasn't until later that he would find the perfect band to channel his extraordinary talents. Though the bands he played with at the time weren't always long-lasting, each experience left a lasting impact on Page. Through these collaborations, he learned the complexities of stage presence, live performance, and the tight-knit chemistry required to create great music. It was his relentless drive to improve and innovate that eventually propelled Page to the forefront of the British music scene. As he honed his craft, he became known for his ability to push the boundaries of what was possible on the guitar, blending his love for rock with the precision of blues and the soul of folk. Each time he played, he evolved, and little did he know, his persistence was about to lead him to the opportunity of a lifetime, the creation of one of the most influential rock bands ever. At the age of 15, Jimmy Page had a pivotal experience that would shape not only his personal life, but also his approach to music and creativity. It all began in an English library, where he stumbled upon a book that would profoundly change his life. Magic in Theory and Practice by Aleister Crowley. Page has often described this moment as nothing short of life-changing. As he delved into Crowley's work, he felt a deep, almost instantaneous connection to the philosophies laid out in its pages. For Jimmy, this wasn't just a passing curiosity. It was the beginning of a lifelong obsession with the occult. Crowley, an infamous British occultist, had a reputation for being a misunderstood genius, and to Page, this was the allure. Crowley's ideas about magic, self-realization, and personal transformation resonated with him deeply. He began to see the world through a different lens, one where the mind was the gateway to unimaginable power and possibilities. As he embraced these teachings, Page found himself drawn into the deeper aspects of occult philosophy, particularly the concept of free will. For Crowley, the true power of an individual came from their ability to understand their own will and pursue it without hesitation or interference. This resonated deeply with Page, who had always sought to carve his own path in both music and life. It wasn't just about reading and understanding Crowley's ideas, it was about living them. Page internalized these teachings, integrating them into his daily life. He adopted Crowley's philosophy of self-exploration and individualism, rejecting the conventional societal norms in favor of a more personal and liberated journey. For Page, the pursuit of personal truth became a guiding principle. It wasn't just about creating music, it was about creating a life that was a reflection of his true, unfiltered self. This period marked a significant turning point in Page's life. As his fascination with Crowley deepened, so too did his commitment to the ideas of personal empowerment and spiritual exploration. The occult wasn't a hobby for Jimmy Page, it was an integral part of his identity. And it would go on to influence not just his worldview, but also the music he created and the persona he would eventually project to the public. Crowley's teachings would shape his artistic endeavors in ways that no one could have predicted, intertwining his spiritual beliefs with the sonic landscapes he crafted. At the age of 15, a seemingly random moment in a library would set the course for Jimmy Page's life in ways he couldn't have imagined. It was there that he first encountered the works of Aleister Crowley, a figure known as much for his controversial views as for his profound influence on modern occultism. The book that caught Page's attention was Magic in Theory and Practice, and in that moment, Jimmy felt an undeniable pull toward Crowley's teachings. Describing the experience as life-changing, Page later revealed that something about the text spoke to him on a deep, almost spiritual level. It wasn't just the ideas themselves. It was the way Crowley's words seemed to align with Page's own inner struggles and desires. This initial exposure to Crowley's work sparked what would become a lifelong obsession for Page. He didn't merely read about the occult. He plunged headfirst into it, devouring everything Crowley had written. To Page, Crowley was not the figure of scandal many had painted him to be, but a misunderstood genius who had cracked the code to unlock personal power and self-realization. For Jimmy, Crowley's ideas didn't just intrigue him, they provided answers to questions he hadn't even known how to ask. Crowley's exploration of magic, consciousness, and self-awareness became an essential part of how Page viewed the world around him. As Page immersed himself in these teachings, he began to adopt Crowley's philosophies as his own. Crowley's emphasis on free will, the idea that an individual must take full responsibility for their own path and not be bound by societal expectations, struck a chord with Page. The concept of free will became a cornerstone of Jimmy's own personal philosophy, shaping how he approached both his music and his life. To Page, the ability to understand and follow one's true will was the ultimate form of liberation. Crowley's teachings urged individuals to break free from the constraints imposed by others and to follow their own instincts, regardless of the consequences. For Page, this became a defining principle that permeated his actions and choices throughout his life. But it wasn't just about the intellectual or philosophical side of Crowley's teachings. There was a deeply personal connection for Page. The teachings of self-exploration and individualism resonated with him on an emotional and psychological level. Jimmy wasn't just seeking intellectual validation. He was searching for a deeper understanding of himself and the world he inhabited. Crowley's focus on discovering one's own purpose and aligning with one's true desires felt like a guidebook for Jimmy's own journey of self-discovery. This search for personal meaning was not just a passing phase, it became a fundamental part of his identity, influencing not only how he approached his music, but how he viewed the very essence of life itself. As his obsession grew, Page began to see his musical journey as an extension of his spiritual one. The connection between his music and his fascination with the occult was not just coincidental, it was deliberate. He began to realize that both were vehicles for personal expression and transformation. Crowley's ideas about magic and manifestation, about shaping reality through willpower and intention, could be seen in Page's approach to his music. For Jimmy, the act of creating was more than just playing guitar. It was a form of self-actualization. His music, just like Crowley's magic, became a tool for bending the world to his will, for expressing his innermost thoughts and desires. In the years that followed, this deep dive into the occult would shape the trajectory of Page's career. His growing reverence for Crowley, coupled with his intense desire to carve out his own path in the world, would find its way into the music he created with Led Zeppelin. Page's spiritual exploration wasn't something he kept in the shadows. It became an integral part of his artistic identity. His obsession with Crowley and the occult world would infuse his music, his stage presence, and even the symbolism within Led Zeppelin's albums. The philosophies of magic, free will, and self-exploration were not just abstract ideas to him. They were the forces driving his creativity and shaping his vision of what his music could become. What began as a young boy's curiosity in a library soon turned into a defining obsession, one that would influence his entire career and the legacy he left behind. Jimmy Page's connection to the occult was not merely a passing interest. It was a profound and transformative force that guided him through his personal and professional life. Crowley's teachings of self-exploration, free will, and individualism were not just theories to Jimmy Page. They were the very foundation of his artistic expression and personal philosophy. In 1968, Jimmy Page brought together a group of musicians that would change the course of rock history. After his time with the Yardbirds came to an end, Page set out to form a band that would not only showcase his guitar prowess, but would revolutionize the music world. He recruited Robert Plant, a powerful and soulful vocalist, along with John Bonham on drums and John Paul Jones on bass and keyboard. Together, they formed the iconic band that would come to be known as Led Zeppelin. From the start, Page was more than just the guitarist. He became the band's driving creative force. His vision, determination, and leadership would help shape Led Zeppelin into one of the most influential bands the world has ever known. As the architect of the group's sound, Page's influence extended beyond the music itself. He was a visionary who fused blues, rock, and even elements of folk and classical music to create a unique and powerful sound. He wasn't just interested in being a guitarist, he wanted to create an atmosphere, a feeling, and a presence. And this vision extended to the band's image, from the elaborate album covers to the symbolism they used in their work. Led Zeppelin's fourth album, often referred to as Led Zeppelin IV, would become one of the most iconic albums in rock history. But it's not just the music that stands out, it's the mysterious symbolism that permeates the record. The cover features 4 distinct symbols, each representing one of the band members. For Page, his symbol, known as Zoso, is perhaps the most intriguing. It is a mysterious, almost cryptic symbol that has fascinated fans and scholars alike for decades. The symbol itself is linked to astrology and alchemy, areas that had become increasingly important to Page as he immersed himself in the occult. The symbol represents more than just an artistic design. It embodies Page's personal interests and beliefs, incorporating his fascination with the ancient and the mystical. Astrology was a particularly significant part of Page's life and music. His personal chart was filled with potent astrological alignments, and he often wore symbols associated with his astrological sign. Page was a Capricorn by sun sign, with Scorpio rising and Cancer in his moon sign. These placements held great meaning for him, and he even had them embroidered onto his stage outfits. To Page, astrology was not just a whimsical interest, but a guiding force in his life. He believed that understanding the influences of the stars could unlock deeper truths about one's own existence. The symbols on his outfits were not just for show. They represented a deep connection to his personal identity and the cosmic forces he believed governed his life and creative process. Another significant piece of symbolism associated with Led Zeppelin IV is the artwork itself, which many believe is inspired by the tarot card, the Hermit. The image on the album's cover, attributed to an unknown artist, depicts an elderly figure holding a lantern, standing against a dark, foreboding backdrop. For Page, the Hermit was a powerful symbol of wisdom, introspection, and spiritual enlightenment. He often spoke about the importance of self-discovery, and the Hermit tarot card represented the idea of seeking inner truth through reflection and solitude. This symbolism is deeply tied to Page's own personal philosophy, which had been shaped by his fascination with the occult and his desire to understand the deeper meanings of life. This connection to the Hermit tarot card is more than just a visual theme. It also reflects the spiritual journey that Page was undertaking at the time. As the leader of Led Zeppelin, Page was not only guiding the band's musical direction, but was also exploring his own spiritual and philosophical beliefs. His exploration of the occult, magic, and self-realization became an integral part of the band's identity. The mysticism that infused Led Zeppelin's music and image was not accidental. It was a deliberate choice, one that reflected Page's deep connection to the mystical and esoteric traditions he had come to embrace. Page's occult interests didn't stop at album covers and symbols. They also influenced the very sound of Led Zeppelin's music. The band's music was often described as transcendent, otherworldly, and deeply emotional. There was a sense of mystery and magic that surrounded the band, and this was no accident. Page believed that music could be a vehicle for spiritual transformation, and his obsession with the occult played a key role in the way he approached both songwriting and performance. Every riff, every solo, every note seemed to carry with it a deeper meaning, a connection to forces beyond the physical world. Led Zeppelin's music became a reflection of Page's own journey into the occult, and the band's image was an extension of his own personal philosophy. The symbolic use of astrology, alchemy, and tarot imagery was not just a gimmick. It was an expression of Page's desire to create something that transcended the mundane. He sought to push boundaries, to explore uncharted territory, and to create music that was both powerful and profound. And in doing so, he crafted a legacy that would endure for generations. In the end, Led Zeppelin was not just a rock band. They were a cultural phenomenon shaped by the mind and vision of Jimmy Page. His commitment to the occult and his fascination with the mystical influenced everything the band did, from their music to their image to their performances. And as the band's popularity grew, so did the mythology surrounding them. Led Zeppelin became more than just a band. They became a symbol of the magic, mystery, and rebellion that defined rock and roll in the 1970s. During the height of his career, Jimmy Page took a significant step in his exploration of the occult by opening an occult bookstore in London. In 1972, he launched the Equinox, a small but ambitious venture dedicated to providing a haven for those with an interest in the mystical, the arcane, and the esoteric. For Page, it wasn't just about running a business. It was about creating a space where like-minded individuals could come together and immerse themselves in the occult knowledge that had so profoundly impacted his own life. The bookstore was meant to be a nucleus, a central point where the curious could explore the works that had shaped his own philosophical journey. Though the Equinox never found commercial success, it still played a crucial role in cementing Page's deep connection to the world of the occult. The store became an expression of his desire to share the esoteric knowledge he had spent years accumulating. It wasn't just about selling books. It was about cultivating an atmosphere that reflected his personal beliefs and passions. For Page, this was a way of giving back, of offering others the same intellectual and spiritual nourishment he had found in the works of Aleister Crowley and other occult figures. The shop might have been small and obscure, but its impact was undeniable, especially in the circles of those who shared Page's interest in the mystical. The shop's greatest legacy, perhaps, lies in its homage to Aleister Crowley, whose works were a major influence on Page's own philosophy. One of the most significant publications that came out of the Equinox was a facsimile edition of Crowley's 1904 text, The Book of the Law. This work, which is considered one of Crowley's most important texts, is a cornerstone of his philosophical system and has influenced countless individuals who have explored the occult. By publishing this edition, Page ensured that Crowley's teachings remained accessible to a new generation of seekers, further deepening the connection between his own artistic vision and Crowley's legacy. While the bookstore didn't succeed in the traditional sense, it wasn't a failure in the ways that truly mattered to Page. The Equinox served as a spiritual center for those who, like him, felt drawn to the mysteries of the universe and the pursuit of higher knowledge. In a world where the occult often remains in the shadows, the Equinox stood as a beacon for those brave enough to explore what lies beyond the material world. And for Page, it was another manifestation of his lifelong commitment to the occult, to Crowley, and to the idea that self-realization through exploration of the unknown was an essential part of the human experience. Ultimately, the short-lived nature of the Equinox doesn't diminish its importance in understanding Jimmy Page's character and his legacy. The bookstore may have closed its doors after a brief run, but its existence helped to solidify the place of the occult in Page's life and in the public persona he crafted. It was a physical manifestation of his passion, a tangible expression of his dedication to the esoteric and his desire to share that knowledge with others. Through the Equinox, Page not only furthered his own personal journey, but also gave the world a glimpse into the mystical world that had shaped him as both a person and an artist. In the end, the bookstore might not have lasted, but its significance lies in the fact that it embodied Page's commitment to something far greater than just rock music. It was a part of his deeper quest for meaning and truth. It was his way of reaching out to those who shared his hunger for knowledge and offering them a place where they could embark on their own spiritual journeys, just as he had done years before. In the early 1970s, Jimmy Page's immersion in the occult led him to a unique collaboration with one of the most famous underground filmmakers of the time, Kenneth Anger. Anger, a known occultist and provocateur, was working on a project called Lucifer Rising, a film that explored themes of mysticism, ritual, and the occult. Recognizing Page's deep ties to the esoteric, Anger invited him to compose the soundtrack for the film. The project was a perfect fit for Page's interests, combining his passion for music with his fascination for the occult. Page recorded 23 minutes of music for the film, with the intention of providing an atmospheric and haunting score that would complement the film's dark and mystical visuals. The collaboration was a reflection of Page's commitment to bringing his occult interests into the artistic realm, and it seemed like the ideal union of music and mysticism. However, what began as an exciting partnership soon began to unravel. Tensions started to arise between Page and Anger, and the collaboration began to falter. Anger, known for his uncompromising nature, grew frustrated with Page's progress on the soundtrack. The two had starkly different working styles, and the lack of communication between them became increasingly evident. Anger felt that Page was not fully invested in the project, accusing him of being a mere dabbler in the occult rather than someone with a true, profound understanding of its deeper meanings. This accusation stung Page, who had dedicated so much of his life to exploring these mystical realms. Anger's frustration was compounded by Page's growing personal struggles, particularly his increasing drug use during this period. Page's drug problems, which had been escalating in the 1970s, played a significant role in the collapse of the Lucifer Rising collaboration. By the time he started working on the project, Page was already deep into his addiction, which was affecting not only his professional life, but his personal relationships as well. His ability to focus and follow through on the project began to deteriorate, and Anger's patience wore thin. What was supposed to be a symbiotic creative partnership quickly soured, with Anger accusing Page of not being able to deliver the deep, thoughtful work he had hoped for. Ultimately, Page was unable to complete the soundtrack to Anger's satisfaction, and the collaboration came to an end. The breakdown of the partnership between Page and Anger not only affected the project, but also strained Page's relationship with other occult figures. For those who admired Page for his knowledge of the occult, the failure to complete the Lucifer Rising soundtrack was seen as a sign that perhaps Page wasn't as committed to his mystical pursuits as he had once seemed. His growing addiction became a significant part of the narrative surrounding him during this period, leading to a sense of disillusionment among some of those who had viewed him as a serious practitioner of the occult. For Page, the fallout from the Lucifer Rising project was another painful reminder of how his drug use was beginning to erode both his professional achievements and personal relationships. He would later reflect on this period as one of great struggle, where his passion for music and the occult became entangled with his battle against addiction. In the years that followed, Page would come to recognize the toll that his habits had taken on his career and his collaborations, and it was a long road before he began to regain control of his life and work. Despite the failure of the Lucifer Rising collaboration, the experience remains a key moment in understanding Jimmy Page's journey through the occult. It was a time when his obsession with mysticism and his creative work collided with his personal demons, leading to a clash that would shape the direction of his life for years to come. The Lucifer Rising project, though unfinished, is a testament to Page's commitment to his artistic and spiritual pursuits, even if the path to that goal was fraught with difficulty. For all the promise the collaboration held, it became a reminder of the dangers that can arise when one's personal struggles interfere with their creative vision. By the 1970s, Jimmy Page was at the peak of his success with Led Zeppelin. The band was an unstoppable force in rock music, and Page was regarded as one of the most innovative and influential guitarists of his time. However, behind the scenes, things were beginning to unravel. During this period, Page became deeply involved in drug use, including heroin. It wasn't just a personal issue, it was intertwined with his identity as a musician. Page admitted in later years that substances became an integral part of his life, affecting not only his personal well-being, but his creativity as well. He believed that drugs played a role in his ability to tap into a certain rawness, a darker side of his artistic expression that helped fuel the band's music during its most intense and creative years. As the band embarked on their 1973 North American tour, the toll of Page's addiction became evident. The grueling schedule, combined with his deteriorating health, started to take a heavy physical and emotional toll on him. By this time, Page was visibly losing weight, and his behavior became increasingly erratic. Reports from the tour describe a guitarist who, despite his immense talent, was losing control. His performances were often unpredictable, and his energy levels were diminishing. The band, which was known for their electrifying stage presence and performances, found themselves dealing with the unpredictable nature of Page's condition. His dependency on drugs had become a serious issue, and his struggles were beginning to impact the band dynamic. The decline in Page's physical and mental health was not an isolated issue. It was a symptom of a deeper addiction that was worsening by the day. As his heroin use escalated, it became more difficult for him to keep up with the demands of touring, recording, and performing at the level Led Zeppelin was accustomed to. His physical health deteriorated rapidly, and his mental state was clouded by the fog of addiction. Page was no longer the vibrant, visionary guitarist who had led the band to fame. He was increasingly distant, withdrawn, and frail. The toll this took on his personal well-being, as well as on the band's unity, was significant. The effects of Page's addiction were not just felt in his personal life. They reverberated throughout Led Zeppelin. His relationships with the other band members were strained, and the overall chemistry that had once made them a musical force began to fray. There was a sense of concern within the band, especially as Page became more unpredictable. His substance abuse created an atmosphere of tension, and his bandmates were forced to deal with the fallout from his personal struggles. The once tight-knit group of musicians began to show signs of disintegration, and the dynamic that had made them so successful started to falter. Despite these issues, Page continued to play a prominent role in the band. His commitment to his music remained strong, but it was clear that the pressures of addiction were weighing heavily on him. As Led Zeppelin's success continued, so too did the personal and professional toll that addiction took on Page. The band's gradual decline in the late 1970s can be attributed, in part, to these internal struggles, as the members began to deal with not only the pressures of fame, but the personal demons that had begun to surface. After the dissolution of Led Zeppelin in 1980, Page found himself at a crossroads. The end of the band marked the beginning of his long road to recovery. However, overcoming addiction was not an immediate process. In the early 1980s, Page faced legal consequences for his drug use. He was arrested twice for drug possession, in 1982 and 1984. But due to his high-profile status, he faced minimal legal repercussions. The arrests were a stark reminder of the grip that drugs had on his life, but they also marked the beginning of his efforts to regain control. Although Page publicly stated that he had overcome his addiction, the truth of that statement was complicated. It took time for Page to fully break free from the hold that drugs had on him, and there were setbacks along the way. But eventually, he did manage to get clean, and his recovery became part of his personal narrative. The toll that drugs had taken on his career and health was immense, but it also gave him a new perspective on life and his music. He was able to rediscover his passion and creativity, which would lead to a resurgence in his career and new collaborations. Page's journey through addiction and recovery was a painful chapter in his life, but it also became an essential part of his legacy. It was a period of intense personal struggle, but also a time of reflection and transformation. For Page, overcoming addiction was not just about reclaiming his career, it was about finding a way to heal and grow as a person. The trials he faced and the lessons he learned from his experiences would go on to shape the rest of his life and career, allowing him to emerge from the darkness of addiction with a renewed sense of purpose and clarity. After the end of Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page's career continued to evolve, albeit without the same level of intensity and fame that he experienced with the band. But his legacy was far from over. Throughout the 1980s and beyond, Page embarked on various projects that allowed him to reconnect with music on his own terms. One of the most notable was his collaboration with former Led Zeppelin frontman Robert Plant. Their partnership led to several successful albums, most famously No Quarter in 1994, which blended Page's rock roots with Plant's folk influences. While their collaborations were often praised for their musical depth, they were also marked by a sense of nostalgia, as the two musicians revisited the chemistry they once shared in Led Zeppelin. Page also pursued his own solo work during this period, although it didn't receive the same commercial success as his previous endeavors with Zeppelin. His solo material, though less recognized, showcased his continued musical evolution and his desire to experiment with new sounds and ideas. He remained a revered figure in the music world, and his work during this time proved that his creative fire had never truly gone out. Even though his post-Zeppelin projects were not as iconic as his work with Led Zeppelin, they still carried the unmistakable mark of Page's genius. Over the years, Jimmy Page has been open about his past, especially regarding his struggles with drug addiction. In interviews, he has reflected candidly on how his drug use affected his life, his career, and his music. The openness in his reflections reveals a man who has come to terms with his past, recognizing both the damage caused by his addiction and the ways in which it impacted his creative process. In a 2003 interview with Q magazine, Page discussed how drugs played an essential role in his creative journey, particularly during his time with Led Zeppelin. He admitted that substances, while destructive in many ways, allowed him to access parts of his creativity that he might not have otherwise reached. For Page, the drugs provided a way to tap into a raw, unfiltered artistic expression, and while he doesn't regret his past, he acknowledges the challenges they caused, both personally and professionally. Despite these struggles, Jimmy Page's legacy as a guitarist is undeniable. His contributions to rock music are woven into the fabric of the genre itself. As a guitarist, his innovative techniques, signature riffs, and groundbreaking approaches to the instrument forever changed the way people listen to and play rock music. From the moment he first picked up a guitar, Page was destined to leave a mark on music, and his work with Led Zeppelin continues to influence generations of musicians. His sound, his style, and his creativity have set the standard for what a rock guitarist can be. He redefined the role of the guitarist in a band, moving from simply providing the musical backbone to becoming a central figure in the creative process. But beyond his technical prowess, Page's legacy also lies in his ability to fuse his personal interests and passions with his music. His obsession with the occult, which he explored through the imagery and symbolism of Led Zeppelin's albums, became an integral part of the band's identity. While many critics focused on the controversy surrounding the occult references, Page's blending of these elements with his musical expression added a layer of depth and intrigue to his work that was unique at the time. The question remains, was his obsession with the occult and drug use a reflection of his personality, or was it simply a product of the time he lived in? Perhaps it was both. The 1960s and 1970s were periods of great social upheaval, where experimentation and breaking free from traditional norms were seen as forms of self-expression. Page's pursuit of the mystical and the unknown was very much in line with the counterculture movement of the time, where artists and musicians sought to explore new realms of consciousness, both creatively and spiritually. In many ways, Jimmy Page's life and career reflect the complexity of being an artist in such a volatile era. His struggles, whether with addiction, personal demons, or his obsession with the occult, became intertwined with his creative output. This blend of darkness and genius gave his music an edge that was raw and unfiltered, and it's this quality that still resonates with fans to this day. The legacy of Jimmy Page is not just about his extraordinary guitar skills or the iconic songs he created. It's about the journey of an artist who sought to push the boundaries of music and art, no matter the cost. Page's journey is a reminder that greatness often comes with complexity and sacrifice. His story is one of intense personal exploration, marked by triumphs, failures, and an unrelenting pursuit of artistic truth. He may have struggled with demons, both internal and external, but it was those struggles that shaped him into one of the most influential musicians in history. Jimmy Page's legacy will always be intertwined with the revolutionary music of Led Zeppelin, the mystical allure of the occult, and the raw, unfiltered passion he brought to every note he played. Jimmy Page's life and career embody the complexity of genius, an artist whose extraordinary talent was often shaped by personal struggles and darker impulses. From his early obsession with the occult to his rise as one of rock's most influential guitarists, Page's journey is as enigmatic as the music he created. His path was never linear, filled with triumphs and challenges that pushed the boundaries of both music and self-expression. As we reflect on his legacy, we're reminded that great artistry often comes with personal cost, but it's this very complexity that makes Page's work timeless. His contributions to music will forever resonate with those who hear the raw power and emotion in his guitar. What's your favorite Jimmy Page song? And what do you think of his journey? Was he a misunderstood visionary? Or did his personal choices shape the man and the music we know today? Let us know in the comments below.